Welcome to Curiosity, the podcast where science meets wonder. Join us as we explore the fascinating, the innovative, and the unexpected, from the secrets of the cosmos to the marvels of everyday life. Each episode takes you on a journey to uncover the knowledge and stories that fuel our endless quest for understanding. Let your curiosity guide you.
Vikings, the silent storm that changed the world. The Vikings, a seafaring people from the Scandinavian lands of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, emerged from the shadows of the early Middle Ages and swept across the known world with an impact that echoed far beyond their own time. Their story begins not just with raids and battles, but with the environment and culture that shaped their daring. Hemmed in by rugged coastlines, deep fjords, and harsh winters, they cultivated a tenacity and resilience born of necessity. Agriculture in their homeland was difficult, with short growing seasons and rocky soil, leading many to look beyond the horizon for opportunity. The Viking Age, generally marked from 793 CE with the infamous attack on the Lindisfarne monastery, was the product of internal pressure and external opportunity. Overpopulation, shifting power structures, and advancements in shipbuilding spurred exploration and expansion. At home, Viking society was organized into tight-knit clans under the leadership of chieftains. Their social world revolved around honor, kinship, and the pursuit of fame, immortalized in the skaldic poetry that praised brave deeds and wise rulers. Unlike the centralized states of their neighbors, Viking society was decentralized, and this lack of rigid authority allowed individual leaders to pursue raiding or trading missions without needing royal sanction. Their longships were marvels of engineering, light and flexible with shallow drafts that allowed navigation of both open seas and inland rivers. This mobility gave them access to vast territories, from the coasts of Ireland and Britain to the heart of modern-day Russia. These ships, powered by sail and oar, carried warriors and settlers across treacherous waters, and their dragon-headed prows became symbols of both fear and fascination. The same people who sacked cities and abducted nobles were also savvy traders, establishing far-reaching routes that stretched from Baghdad to the Baltic. The early phase of Viking expansion was largely driven by plunder. Wealth stored in monasteries and coastal towns presented irresistible targets, and their sudden attacks were terrifying in their speed and precision. Yet not all their interactions were violent. Over time, many Vikings settled in the very lands they raided, integrating with local populations and leaving lasting cultural marks. Their presence in places like northern England, Normandy, and parts of Ireland led to the blending of traditions, languages, and political structures. The Danelaw in England is a testament to this duality, where Norse law coexisted with Anglo-Saxon traditions. Viking religion and mythology played a central role in shaping their worldview. Their pantheon of gods, Odin the All-Father, Thor the Thunderer, Freya the lover of beauty and battle, reflected their values of courage, honor, and cunning. Death was not feared but embraced if it led to Valhalla, the warrior's paradise. Burial customs often included grave goods, weapons, and even ships, meant to serve the deceased in the afterlife. This strong belief in fate and the afterlife contributed to their boldness in battle and their willingness to risk everything for glory. Their legacy, though often reduced to the image of horn-helmeted barbarians, is far more complex. The early Viking Age was a period of dynamic transition, of peoples in motion, of ideas carried across oceans, and of societies adapting to new realities. The Vikings were more than warriors, they were explorers, settlers, artisans, and storytellers. They laid the foundation for a transformation of Europe that would ripple through centuries, reshaping borders, languages, and commerce. This is only the beginning of their saga, one rooted in the rocky soil of Scandinavia, but reaching far beyond the cold seas they first crossed. Thought for a couple of seconds as the centuries turned, the Vikings' restless spirit carried them ever farther afield, and their story evolved from raiders to settlers, traders, and statesmen. Crossing the North Atlantic, Norse explorers discovered and colonized Iceland, forging a new society on volcanic ground. There they developed a remarkable system of communal governance, assemblies called things, where free men gathered to deliberate legal disputes, negotiate alliances, and craft laws that balanced individual rights with communal well-being. From Iceland's rugged coast, emigrants pushed on to Greenland, clinging to marginal farmland before reaching the shores of North America, Vinland, where they briefly established footholds long before Columbus. These Western ventures reveal a people driven not only by greed but by curiosity, by the conviction that the horizon could always be pushed back a little more. Meanwhile, to the east the Vikings traveled up the great Russian riverways, linking Scandinavia with Byzantium and the Abbasid caliphates. The Norsemen, known here as the Russ, transported furs, amber, and slaves southward and returned laden with silks, spices, and silver coin. Along the trade routes they founded fortified towns like Novgorod and Kiev, laying the foundations for the medieval Rus principalities. In these melting pots of culture, Norse, Slavic, and Greek customs interwove. Norse gods whispered alongside Orthodox icons, and runic inscriptions appeared on Christian crosses. The Vikings' adaptability to foreign environments and peoples helped them transition from marauders on the shoreline to respected partners, sometimes even mercenary guards for imperial courts. Back in Scandinavia, life was as much about creating as it was about conquering. Skilled artisans turned iron into blades both functional and beautiful, inlaid with silver or cloaked in pattern-welded steel. Woodcarvers adorned longship prows and household chests with intertwining beasts and vines, visual echoes of the mythic serpents and dragons they revered. Textile workers wove intricate patterns on woolen tapestries, while jewelry makers cast rings and brooches in gold and bronze, emblazoned with runes bearing blessings or protective spells. These crafts were not mere decoration, they embodied status, piety, and identity, and archaeological finds of grave goods testify to the pride with which these objects were made and worn. The domestic realm was governed by its own customs and expectations. Viking women, though barred from the front lines of battle, wielded considerable influence at home. As stewards of the household economy, they managed livestock, supervised fostered children, and could inherit property if a husband fell in battle. Their mastery of textile arts was equally crucial, for warm clothing and sailcloth sustained families and voyages alike. The laws upheld by the things protected widows' rights and regulated marital disputes, reflecting a society that saw women as essential economic actors, not mere chattels. Myths and storytelling permeated every hearth. The skalds, itinerant bards and poets, crafted verses that immortalized chiefs' deeds and recited sagas that wove history and legend into a seamless tapestry. Gathered around firelight, communities heard of Odin's quests for wisdom, of Thor's battles with frost giants, and of mortal heroes whose cunning and courage restored order to a capricious universe. These oral narratives preached values, loyalty, honor, sacrifice, while also offering a shared past that bound disparate clans into broader kinship networks. Yet even as these cultural achievements blossomed, outside forces began to reshape the Scandinavian world. Christian missionaries brought new spiritual ideas, and the kings who converted often gained the support of the church to centralize power. As royal authority solidified, chieftains' autonomy waned. By the 11th century, many Norse chieftains traded their axes for the cross, and Viking raids gave way to Crusader-style pilgrimages. New dynasties emerged in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, each claiming descent from both Norse gods and Christian saints, forging identities that would become the medieval kingdoms of Europe. By blending tradition with adaptation, raiding with trading, pagan rites with Christian worship, clan autonomy with royal rule, the Vikings metamorphosed from a dispersed network of hardy seafarers into the institutionalized rulers of kingdoms. Their era of open conflict and boundless exploration gradually receded, leaving behind a legacy etched in sagas, in laws, in cities that still bear their names, and in the DNA of peoples from Newfoundland to Novgorod. This chapter of transformation, from wandering warriors to settled statesmen, sets the stage for an even broader sweep of influence, one that persisted long after the last longship had drawn ashore. In the final decades of the Viking Age, the very seafarers who had once thundered across European coastlines and riverways found themselves woven into the fabric of the realms they had helped to shape. Norse chieftains had become Christian kings, ruling over lands that stretched from the Scottish Isles to the Danish archipelago. As centralized monarchies took root, the age of independent warbands gave way to feudal obligations and territorial defense. Young nobles trained more often in the arts of diplomacy, administration, and courtly ceremony than in the grim craft of the raider's life. The longship, once the symbol of sudden terror, found new purpose ferrying merchants and pilgrims safely between ports, its hulls repurposed for trade as peace and commerce wove tighter bonds across the North Sea. Even as the swords were sheathed, the ripples of Norse expansion continued to resonate through Europe's evolving kingdoms. In England, the laws of the Danelaw persisted in local custom and legal terms for centuries, while place names ending in by or thorp marked the once Norse-dominated landscapes. In Normandy, the Viking leader Rollo's descendants would famously cross the Channel in 1066, their Norman-French armies reshaping not only English history but the entire trajectory of medieval Christendom. Farther east, in Novgorod and Kiev, the legacy of the Rus would endure in the dynasties and institutions that laid the groundwork for Russia's medieval principalities. Across these regions, Norse bloodlines mingled with local tribes, embedding Viking genetic signatures deep into Europe's population. As generations turned the page on open warfare, a new fascination with Norse mythology and sagas sprang up among scholars and poets. The written compilation of Iceland's sagas in the 12th and 13th centuries, stories of Egil Skallagrimsson, of Harald Fairhair, of the settlement of Greenland, ensured that the memory of Viking deeds would outlive the age itself. In monasteries and royal courts, these epic narratives were copied and circulated, blending pagan heroic motifs with Christian moral reflections. Through the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance, Northern scholars preserved these texts, even as much of Europe turned its gaze toward classical antiquity. The sagas remained a breath of Northern legend, a testament to that blend of martial prowess, poetic eloquence, and moral complexity unique to the Norse mind. Centuries later, in the age of Romantic nationalism, the rediscovery of runestones, burial mounds, and long-lost monastic accounts rekindled Europe's imagination about its Viking past. Archaeologists in Scandinavia and beyond began to excavate ship burials and fortresses, unearthing treasures of jewelry, weapons, and intricately carved wood. These finds offered tangible proof of the craftsmanship and far-reaching connections the Vikings had cultivated. For many Northern Europeans, the Viking heritage became a source of pride, a link to an image of freedom, exploration, and resilience in the face of adversity. Today, the Viking legacy endures in unexpected ways, in the diasporic traditions of Newfoundland communities whose oral histories preserve echoes of Vinland, in Scandinavian surnames and festivals, in museums that reconstruct the smoky longhouses of Hedeby and Birka. Popular culture celebrates them, through cinema, television, reenactment, and best-selling novels, often romanticizing their horn-helmed image even as serious scholarship corrects these myths. Yet beneath the myth and the spectacle lies the real story of a people who transformed the medieval world, relentless navigators who catalyzed global trade networks, proto-nation builders who laid the foundations of modern states, and storytellers whose sagas continue to speak to our enduring fascination with human courage, curiosity, and the thin line between destruction and creation. The Vikings may have slipped from the longship into legend, but the currents they stirred still carry us forward on the vast ocean of history.